Elena turned away from the viewport, carefully maintaining her diplomatic smile despite the burning sensation in her chest. 20 years of service in the United Earth Defense Fleet had taught her patience, but the constant dismissal from the Galactic Alliance species tested her limits. "Captain Reyes," a melodic voice called from behind her. "I hope our colleagues aren't giving you too much trouble." Ambassador Talana of the Illuvian Concordat approached, her translucent skin shimming under the reception hall's lights. Unlike most Alliance species, the Illuvians had always treated humans with a measure of respect, perhaps because they too had faced isolation before joining galactic society. "Nothing I can't handle, Ambassador," Elena replied, accepting a glass of iridescent liquid from a passing server drone. "Though I sometimes wonder if we'll ever convince them that different doesn't mean inferior." Talana's 4 eyes blinked in synchronized amusement. The Alliance races have grown complacent in their technological convergence. Most developed their ship designs through exchange of ideas, not independent evolution. Elena nodded, watching as Commander Vrax held court across the reception hall. The Thoraxian's exoskeleton gleamed with ceremonial oils as he gestured dramatically toward the viewport where his flagship, the indomitable Claw, hovered among the stars. The vessel's needle-like profile bristled with weapon arrays, its hull optimized for speed and offensive capability. The indomitable Claw can disable a planetary defense system in under 7 minutes, Vrax announced to his admirers. With minimal crew requirements and maximum combat efficiency. Nothing extraneous or bulky. He glanced pointedly at Elena. Lieutenant Sarah Chen materialized at Elena's side, her uniform impeccable despite the 12-hour diplomatic security detail she'd just completed. "Captain, our engineering team reports the atmospheric recalibration is complete. The Redemption has adjusted to the station's environmental settings." Elena nodded. Another inefficiency in human ships, the ability to completely reconfigure life support for any atmospheric condition. Most Alliance vessels required their crews to wear adaptive gear when visiting stations calibrated for different species. "How does your crew tolerate serving on such vessels?" A civilian diplomat asked, his tentacles twisting in what Elena had learned was an expression of genuine curiosity. "Our military architects calculate that human ships operate at approximately 67% combat efficiency compared to dedicated warships of similar size." Elena sipped her drink before answering. "We define efficiency differently, Ambassador. The UES Redemption can sustain its crew of 240 for 3 years without resupply, conduct atmospheric and aquatic operations, provide full medical services for up to 2,000 individuals, and yes, engage in combat operations." The civilian's skin darkened in surprise. But why carry such capabilities when specialized vessels or planetary facilities could provide them? It seems redundant. Because Earth learned long ago that specialization creates vulnerability, Elena replied quietly. "Before we joined the galactic community, we had no allies to provide support vessels or nearby bases for repair and resupply. Every ship we sent into the void had to be self-sufficient." Talana nodded appreciatively. A philosophy born of necessity. Fascinating. The conversation halted as Commander Vrax approached, flanked by 2 junior officers. His mandibles clicked in what humans had learned was the Thoraxian equivalent of a dismissive smirk. "Captain Reyes, I've been meaning to ask, do all Earth vessels double as cargo haulers, or is the Redemption particularly accommodating?" Before Elena could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. The ambient lighting shifted to emergency protocols as a communications officer burst into the reception hall, face pale with urgency. Emergency situation at Kepler 779c mining colony. They're under attack. The holographic display in the center of the reception hall expanded, showing that Kepler 779c mining colony in vivid detail. The facility sprawled across a rust-colored plateau, interconnected domes glistening under the light of twin suns. Several of the outer domes already showed visible damage, their transparent surfaces marred by impact craters and scorch marks. Situation report, demanded Admiral Cathax, all traces of diplomatic pleasantries vanishing from his tone. The communications officer's fingers danced across her datapad. Colony population 7,322. Primarily mining operations for rare isotopes, but includes a scientific research station and educational facilities for dependents. The atmospheric processors were damaged by the solar flare 18 hours ago. Raiders breached the defensive perimeter approximately 3 hours later. Elena watched as Commander Vrax immediately took command of the situation, stepping forward with the natural authority of someone accustomed to crisis management. "Deploy tactical display of available vessels," he ordered. The hologram shifted to show the location of all Galactic Alliance military ships within range. The diplomatic station was positioned in a relatively quiet sector, with most combat vessels engaged in training exercises near the Cygnus Arm, or patrolling the disputed territories along the outer rim. Admiral Cathax hissed in frustration. Nothing closer than 36 hours at maximum speed. "The Thoraxian battle group can respond," Vrax said, pointing to 3 red markers representing his vessels. "The Indomitable Claw and her sister ships can reach Kepler 779c in 17 hours. There's also the UES Redemption," Elena interjected quietly. Several of the gathered diplomats exchanged skeptical glances. Commander Vrax's mandibles clicked rapidly. "This is a military operation requiring specialized combat vessels, Captain Reyes," he said dismissively. "Not a cargo run." Ambassador Tulana stepped forward. "The Redemption's presence would double your available ships, Commander. Surely that tactical advantage outweighs your reservations." The holographic display flickered as another transmission broke through. A different face appeared, a Nexian officer with dust-covered features and panic in her 4 eyes. "This is Lieutenant Commander Vara of Colony Security. The situation has deteriorated. The Raiders have seized control of Dome 3, which houses our primary environmental controls. Acid rain has begun falling on the eastern quadrant, and a tremendous explosion rocked the transmission. We have children from 18 different species in the education dome. The environmental seals are failing. We need immediate." The transmission cut out abruptly. The room fell silent. Even Vrax seemed momentarily stunned by the desperation in the security officer's voice. Admiral Cathax turned to face the Thoraxian commander and Elena. "You will both depart immediately. This is now a joint rescue and combat mission with the highest priority." Elena nodded crisply, while Vrax's exoskeleton stiffened in what appeared to be reluctant acceptance. As the diplomats dispersed to coordinate the response, Lieutenant Chen approached Elena. "Captain, we can be ready to depart in 20 minutes, she reported. "Engineering has already begun warm-up sequences for the jump drives." Elena wasn't surprised. Her crew operated with the efficiency that came from extensive training and the knowledge that their ship's unique capabilities often placed them in emergency response situations. "Commander Vrax," Elena called across the room. The Thoraxian turned slowly, his compound eyes reflecting the emergency lights. "The Redemption will match your course and speed. We should coordinate our approach strategy during transit." "Very well," he replied stiffly, "though I question what tactical value your vessel will provide against armed raiders." Elena simply nodded, keeping her thoughts to herself. The Thoraxian would learn soon enough why Earthships carried so many inefficiencies. As she strode toward the exit, she activated her comlink. "Redemption, this is Captain Reyes. Prepare for emergency deployment to Kepler 700 and 79C. Full rescue protocols. Combat conditions expected." The tactical room aboard the Redemption hummed with activity as holographic displays showed the 4 vessels speeding toward Kepler 700 and 79C. Commander Vrax stood rigidly by the central table, his exoskeleton catching the blue light of the tactical projections. 3 junior officers from his command ship accompanied him, maintaining a respectful distance from the human crew members. "The acid storms have accelerated," Lieutenant Chen reported, updating the environmental overlay. "Colony meteorological data shows the front will reach the main habitation dome in 62 hours, not 72 as initially reported." Vrax chittered softly to his science officer, who stepped forward with obvious reluctance. "Our atmospheric specialists confirm this assessment," the Thoraxian said. "The solar flare has destabilized the planet's upper atmosphere, creating a cascade effect in the already corrosive environment." Elena studied the projections carefully. What about the hostage situation? A fragmented transmission had reached them an hour earlier, confirming that the raiders had seized control of the medical facilities and were holding the colony's medical staff at gunpoint. The leader of the raiders had identified himself as Captain Drask of the Crimson Talon Gang, notorious for targeting vulnerable outposts along the Galactic Rim. "Standard hostage protocols would suggest a 2-pronged approach," Vrax said, his mandibles clicking decisively. "My vessels will neutralize the raiders' ships in orbit, while a strike team secures the medical dome." "And the atmospheric crisis?" Elena asked quietly. Vrax's compound eyes shifted, focusing somewhere beyond the tactical display. "That presents complications. The Thoraxian vessels carry emergency response teams, but our environmental equipment is limited to our own biological needs." Lieutenant Chen exchanged glances with Elena before activating another display. "According to our database, Kepler 779C has 18 different species with varying atmospheric requirements. The acid storms will affect each differently." "Do your vessels carry atmospheric processors, Commander?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. "That is not the function of a warship," Vrax replied stiffly. "Under normal circumstances, specialized relief vessels would follow our combat units." "But there are no relief vessels within range," Elena pointed out. The Redemption's chief engineer, Commander Yoshida, stepped forward. A veteran of 23 years in Earth's fleet, she had supervised the installation of the ship's modular systems during its last refit. "Captain, I've completed the inventory you requested," she reported, handing Elena a datapad. "We can deploy 12 portable atmospheric processors capable of creating safe environments for all 18 species present on the colony. The medical bay has been reconfigured to accommodate emergency triage for up to 800 casualties of varying physiologies." One of the Thoraxian officers made a sound that Elena's translator couldn't quite capture, something between surprise and disbelief. "Your vessel carries such equipment as standard?" the officer asked. "Of course," Yoshida replied matter-of-factly. "Along with enough emergency rations to feed the entire colony for 30 days if necessary." Commander Vrax's posture shifted subtly. Such capabilities would, indeed, be valuable in this situation. The admission seemed to cost him considerable effort. Elena nodded, keeping her expression neutral despite the small satisfaction she felt. "Perhaps we should revise our approach strategy. While your vessels handle the combat aspects, the Redemption can focus on environmental stabilization and potential evacuation." Evacuation? Vrax's mandibles clicked rapidly. "The colony has 7,000 inhabitants." "The Redemption can accommodate them," Elena said simply. "It would be crowded, but manageable for the journey to the nearest Alliance station." As the implications sank in, Elena watched understanding dawn across the faces of the Thoraxian officers. Their sleek, combat-optimized vessels could never attempt such an evacuation. For the first time since their mission began, Commander Vrax regarded the human captain with something that might have been respect. "It seems," he said carefully, "that our different approaches may be complementary in this instance." Commander Vrax followed Elena through the Redemption's corridors, his compound eyes taking in details that contradicted everything he'd been taught about efficiency in starship design. The passageways were wider than military specifications would dictate, with modular panels that could be quickly reconfigured. Crew members worked with practiced precision as the ship transformed around them. "These bulkheads," Vrax said, tapping a section of wall with one armored claw. "They're moving." "Adaptive architecture," Elena explained as they continued toward the main cargo bay. "Every section of the Redemption can be reconfigured based on mission parameters." They passed a large compartment where medical staff were setting up additional triage stations. The equipment looked oddly familiar to Vrax. "Those are Thoraxian medical scanners," he noted with surprise. Dr. Patel, the ship's chief medical officer, looked up from her preparations. "We maintain medical equipment calibrated for 37 different species, Commander. Your people included." Vrax's antenna twitched in what Elena had learned indicated confusion. "But how could you justify the expense? The training requirements alone would be—" "Essential," Dr. Patel interrupted firmly. "If we encounter injured Thoraxians, I need to treat them correctly. Lives depend on preparation, not assumptions." The tour continued to the main cargo bay, which had been almost completely transformed. What had appeared empty on the Thoraxians' initial scans now revealed its true purpose. Modular walls had reconfigured to create temporary housing units. Atmospheric processors hummed as they were tested and calibrated for different environmental requirements. "This is impossible," one of Vrax's junior officers whispered. "Our scans showed this area as empty space." Lieutenant Chen smiled slightly. "Our hull composition includes adaptive materials that can mask internal configurations. A holdover from Earth's more paranoid days." Elena led them to the central logistics station, where Commander Yoshida was coordinating the transformation effort. A holographic display showed the colony layout with color-coded evacuation priorities. "We've identified 4 primary atmospheric zones required for the colonists," Yoshida explained, highlighting different sections of the cargo bay. "Zone 1 will maintain standard oxygen-nitrogen for humans and compatible species. Zone 2 will support methane breathers. Zones 3 and 4 will handle the more exotic requirements, including the silicon-based Petrosians." Vrax studied the display, mandibles working slowly as he processed the implications. "Your crew seems well practiced at this transformation." "The Redemption responds to approximately 28 emergency situations annually," Elena replied. "It's part of our standard mission profile." "While conducting military operations?" Vrax asked incredulously. "The distinction isn't always relevant from our perspective," Elena said. "Defense and preservation are 2 sides of the same duty." They reached the shuttle bay, where crews were preparing a diverse fleet of small craft. Some were clearly designed for combat with visible weapon mounts, while others featured reinforced hulls with environmental seals. Our evacuation shuttles can operate in the acid storm conditions for up to 8 hours, Lieutenant Chen explained. Each can transport 50 colonists of varying sizes and atmospheric needs. The Thoraxian science officer's posture had changed completely since boarding the Redemption. The initial condescension had given way to professional curiosity. "Commander," he addressed Vrax while still studying the shuttles. "Incorporating even a portion of these capabilities into our vessels would significantly enhance our operational flexibility." Vrax didn't respond immediately. He was watching a team of human engineers loading portable atmospheric processors onto a shuttle. The devices were elegant in their simplicity, adaptable to almost any environment. "Your people designed these ships because you had no choice," he finally said to Elena. "Isolation forced innovation." Elena nodded. Earth learned hard lessons before joining the galactic community. Every ship we sent into space might never receive support or rescue. They had to be self-sufficient. "A philosophy born of necessity," Vrax echoed, unknowingly repeating Ambassador Tilana's words for the diplomatic reception. "One that may prove decisive in the hours ahead." The Redemption emerged from hyperspace flanked by the 3 Thoraxian vessels. Kepler 779c filled the view screen, its rust-colored surface partially obscured by swirling yellow clouds. 7 raider ships orbited the planet, their hulls bearing the distinctive red markings of the Crimson Talon gang. "Combat stations," Elena ordered calmly. Around her, the bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, transforming the command center from its transit configuration to battle readiness. Lieutenant Chen's console illuminated with tactical data. "Raiders have detected our arrival. They're moving to intercept." The comm system crackled as Commander Vrax's voice filled the bridge. "Captain Reyes, we will engage the raiders. Position your vessel behind the defensive line formed by my ships." Elena exchanged glances with her tactical officer. "Acknowledged, Commander. The Redemption will support your assault while preparing for surface operations." On the main view screen, the 3 Thoraxian vessels accelerated toward the raiders, their sleek hulls gleaming under the light of the system's twin suns. They moved with remarkable precision, executing a complex flanking maneuver that immediately put the raiders on the defensive. "They really are magnificent combat vessels," Lieutenant Chen murmured as energy weapons flashed between the ships. "Indeed," Elena agreed, watching as 2 raider vessels attempted to break formation, only to be herded back by precise weapons fire from the indomitable Claw. "Begin atmospheric entry preparations. I want the first evacuation shuttles ready to lodge the moment we establish a safe corridor." Commander Yoshida's voice came through the internal comms. "Captain, we're detecting a massive spike in atmospheric instability. The acid storm front is accelerating beyond previous projections." "Put it on screen," Elena ordered. The tactical display shifted to show the colony domes on the planet's surface. The main habitation zone remained intact, but several outer domes were already showing stress fractures from the corrosive environment. A massive yellow-green storm front was visibly advancing across the landscape, moving faster than their models had predicted. "Update evacuation priorities," Elena commanded. "Focus on the outlying domes first, and deploy the atmospheric stabilizers immediately. We can't wait until after the combat situation is resolved." As the Redemption began its descent toward the colony, the space battle above took an unexpected turn. One of the Thoraxian vessels, the Swift Justice, took a direct hit to its starboard engine housing. The sleek warship tumbled briefly before its secondary systems stabilized its position, but smoke vented from the damaged section. "Captain," Chen reported, "the Swift Justice reports 23 casualties, including severe injuries to their engineering crew. Their medical bay is at capacity." Elena nodded decisively. "Inform Commander Vrax that we're dispatching a medical shuttle to the Swift Justice. Dr. Patel will coordinate the transfer of their wounded to our facilities." "But, Captain," her communications officer interjected, "we're about to begin colony evacuation. The medical deck is prepped for colonist triage." "We have contingency capacity," Elena replied without hesitation. "No ally personnel will be left untreated while we have resources to help. That's non-negotiable." As the Redemption entered the upper atmosphere, the first evacuation shuttles launched from its ventral bays. Simultaneously, a medical transport detached from the dorsal section, adjusting course toward the damaged Thraxian vessel. On the bridge of the Indomitable Claw, Commander Vrax received the notification of the human medical support. For a moment, he paused in his tactical planning. The concept of diverting resources from the primary mission to assist allies seemed inefficient by Thraxian military doctrine. Yet he could not deny the relief he felt knowing his injured crew would receive immediate care. The Swift Justice acknowledges and accepts assistance. He transmitted to the Redemption. Then, after a brief hesitation, he added, "Your adaptability is appreciated, Captain Reyes." As the Redemption descended through the acidic clouds, its modified shields glowing against the corrosive assault, Elena allowed herself a small smile. "That's what we're here for, Commander." The Redemption hovered 100 meters above the main colony dome, its modified shields extending downward to create a protective umbrella against the intensifying acid rain. 3 evacuation shuttles had already returned with the first wave of colonists from the outlying research stations, while engineering teams deployed portable atmospheric processors to stabilize the deteriorating environmental conditions. Elena studied the tactical display on the bridge, tracking both the space battle above and the ground operations below. The Thraxian vessels had managed to disable 4 of the 7 raider ships, but the remaining 3 had taken up defensive positions around the colony's orbital communication array. "Captain," Lieutenant Chen reported, "we've evacuated approximately 800 colonists so far. Priority has been given to children and medical cases." The communications officer raised her hand. Incoming transmission from Commander Vrax. The Thraxian commander's face appeared on screen, his exoskeleton showing stress fractures around the mandibles, a sign of extreme tension that Elena had learned to recognize during their short association. "Captain Reyes, we've intercepted communications between the raiders. This attack was orchestrated specifically to test a new weapon system. We believe they're preparing to deploy it." Elena's expression remained calm, though her mind raced through contingency scenarios. "What kind of weapon, Commander?" "Unknown, but their communications suggest it targets propulsion systems. The Swift Justice has already transferred all wounded to your vessel. I'm ordering all Thraxian ships to maintain orbital distance from." His transmission abruptly cut off as a brilliant blue-white pulse erupted from the largest raider vessel. The energy wave rippled outward in a perfect sphere, washing over the Thraxian ships and the upper atmosphere of Kepler 779c. "Report," Elena commanded as the wave dissipated. "Energy signature unknown," the science officer responded, fingers flying over her console. "No damage to our shields or systems, but we're detecting massive power fluctuations from the Thraxian vessels." The tactical display confirmed what Elena already suspected. All 3 Thraxian ships were drifting, their engines dark. Only minimal life support systems appeared operational. Lieutenant Chen looked up from her console, her expression grim. The Thraxian vessels are reporting complete propulsion failure. Weapons systems compromised. They're dead in space, Captain. Before Elena could respond, a new transmission forced its way onto their communications system. A scarred Vraxian face filled the screen, 4 yellow eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Attention human vessel and disabled Thraxian warships. I am Captain Drask of the Crimson Talon. As you can see, our new electromagnetic pulse system has proven quite effective against Alliance military technology. Drask's lipless mouth stretched into what might have been a smile. Your combat vessels are helpless. The bulky human transport poses no threat according to our intelligence. You have 2 options. Surrender all military vessels for salvage, or watch as we target the colony's remaining atmospheric domes with our conventional weapons. You have precisely 15 minutes to decide. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in momentary silence. Captain, the tactical officer reported, the raiders are positioning their vessels to target the main habitation dome. 3,000 colonists remain inside. Elena stood, straightening her uniform jacket with a calm deliberation that steadied her crew. Open a channel to Commander Vrax. The Thraxian appeared on screen, his vessel's emergency lighting casting ominous shadows across his features. Captain Reyes, he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. It appears our specialized combat vessels have been rendered ineffective. I regret that our joint mission must end in failure. Elena's expression remained composed, but a resolute gleam appeared in her eyes. Commander, I believe you've misunderstood our purpose here. The mission hasn't failed. In fact, it's about to truly begin. She turned to Lieutenant Chen. Inform engineering to initiate Protocol Omega. And tell Dr. Petzold to secure all patients for possible combat maneuvers. Commander Vrax's antenna twitched in confusion. Captain Reyes, what are you planning? Your transport vessel cannot possibly engage 3 armed raiders. Elena's smile was small but determined. Commander, I think it's time you learned why Earthships are built the way they are. The Redemption's bridge transformed before Commander Vrax's eyes. Panels that had appeared decorative slid aside to reveal additional tactical stations. Crew members who had been coordinating evacuation efforts now moved with practiced efficiency to combat positions. Lieutenant Chen's console, expanded as weapon targeting systems, came online. On the main view screen, Captain Drask's face reappeared. Your time is running short. Have you decided to surrender, or shall we begin destroying the colony domes? Elena stepped forward, her posture relaxed but commanding. Captain Drask, this is Captain Elena Reyes of the United Earth Defense Fleet. I suggest you reconsider your position. Drask's 4 eyes blinked in what appeared to be amusement. A bold statement from a transport vessel. Our intelligence indicates your ship class carries minimal armaments. Your combat vessels are disabled. Your intelligence is outdated, Elena replied calmly. The UES Redemption is extending an offer. Withdraw your forces immediately, and you may leave this system intact. Laughter erupted from the raider captain. Perhaps your translator is malfunctioning, human. Allow me to demonstrate our seriousness. One of the raider vessels fired a warning shot that streaked past the colony's main dome, close enough to make colonists scream in fear. The sound carried through the open communication channel. Weapons free, Elena ordered, her voice steady. Tactical, deploy combat drones and target their propulsion systems. Let's show them what a human transport can do. The Redemption shuddered slightly as dozens of panels along its hull slid open, revealing weapon ports that had been completely concealed during previous scans. Simultaneously, the cargo bays that had been reconfigured for evacuation operations now disgorged swarms of combat drones, their sleek hulls gleaming as they accelerated toward the raider vessels. Impossible. Vrax whispered from the auxiliary tactical station, where he had been monitoring the situation. Those weapon systems weren't visible on any scan. Commander Yoshida smiled slightly as she monitored the power distribution. Adaptive hull technology. The same materials that let us reconfigure our internal compartments can mask external features when needed. The raiders reacted with visible panic, their vessels breaking formation as they attempted to target the unexpected drone swarm. The Redemption's main weapons came online, energy beams, lancing out with precision to disable the raiders' primary weapon arrays. Their shields are adapting, Lieutenant Chen reported. They're attempting to reconfigure to block our specific energy signature. Switch to kinetic penetrators, Elena commanded, and bring us about to position 8. We need to maintain the protective barrier over the main colony dome. The massive ship moved with surprising agility, maintaining its protective position over the colonists, while simultaneously engaging all 3 raider vessels. On his damaged ship, Commander Vrax watched the tactical feed with growing astonishment. The Redemption was outperforming dedicated warships in combat while still conducting evacuation operations. Captain, Chen reported, raider flagship attempting to retreat to hyperspace. Disable their jump drive, Elena ordered. All raiders must be accounted for. A burst of concentrated fire from the Redemption's ventral weapons array struck the flagship with surgical precision. The raider vessel's engines flared briefly before shutting down completely. On the view screen, Captain Drask's expression had transformed from arrogance to shock. What manner of deception is this? No transport vessel carries such capabilities. Elena's reply was calm, but carried unmistakable steel. That's where you're mistaken, Captain Drask. This isn't a transport vessel attempting to fight. This is a warship that never forgot the importance of saving lives. Commander Vrax studied the human captain with new understanding. The Thoraxian military had always seen combat and rescue as separate functions requiring specialized vessels. The humans had instead created ships capable of excellence in both roles simultaneously. Captain Reyes, he transmitted, his voice carrying unexpected respect. The Thoraxian Empire may need to reconsider its assessment of Earth vessel design philosophy. 2 weeks after the Kepler 779c incident, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Defense Council hummed with anticipation. Representatives from 37 species filled the tiered seating, their attention focused on the central holographic display. The curved walls of the chamber, normally adorned with the emblems of member worlds, now display technical schematics of the UES Redemption alongside footage from the colony rescue operation. Elena sat beside Ambassador Tirana in the diplomatic section, her dress uniform adorned with the newly awarded Galactic Service Cross. She watched as Admiral Cathax concluded his formal report on the incident. And thus, the combined efforts of the Thoraxian battle group and the Earth vessel prevented what could have been a catastrophic loss of life. All 7,322 colonists were successfully evacuated or sheltered until environmental stability was restored. The Assembly President, an ancient dendroban whose bark-like skin had darkened with age, leaned forward. The Council has reviewed the full tactical data. I believe Commander Vrax has additional observations to present. Vrax stepped onto the central platform, his exoskeleton gleaming under the ceremonial oils of his recent promotion to admiral. The damage to his mandibles had been expertly repaired, but faint stress fractures remained visible, a mark of honor in Thraxian culture. "Esteemed representatives," he began, his translated voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "the events at Kepler 779c have forced me to reconsider fundamental assumptions about ship design philosophy." The holographic display shifted to show side-by-side comparisons of Thraxian warships and the Redemption. For generations, the Thraxian Empire has built vessels for specific purposes: combat, transport, medical support, scientific research. We believed specialization represented the pinnacle of efficiency. Vrax paused, his compound eyes sweeping the assembly. We were mistaken. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as Vrax continued. The UES Redemption that demonstrated capabilities that no specialized vessel could match. While our warships became helpless after the electromagnetic attack, the human vessel adapted. While we could only fight, they could fight asterisk and asterisk save. The display showed footage of the Redemption hovering protectively over the colony dome, while simultaneously engaging raider vessels and deploying evacuation shuttles. Humanity developed this approach through necessity, Vrax explained. Isolated in their home system for centuries, they built ships that could operate independently for years without support. Every vessel needed combat capabilities, medical facilities, scientific laboratories, and humanitarian capacity. Elena watched as representatives from traditionally militaristic species leaned forward with interest. Even the Cephalian diplomat who had questioned her at the diplomatic reception now appeared thoughtful. The Thraxian Empire proposes a joint design initiative, Vrax announced, incorporating the modular adaptability of human vessels into next-generation alliance ships. What we once dismissed as inefficiency, we now recognize as the ultimate form of preparation. As Vrax concluded his presentation, the council erupted in discussion. Elena felt a light touch on her arm and turned to find Ambassador Tilana smiling. "Quite an achievement, Captain," the Illuvian said softly. "You've changed centuries of military design doctrine in a single mission." "The Redemption's crew deserves the credit," Elena replied. "They performed exactly as trained." The Assembly President called for order before addressing Elena directly. "Captain Reyes, the Council would be honored to hear Earth's perspective on this matter." Elena rose and walked to the central platform, nodding respectfully to Vrax as he stepped aside. For a moment, she surveyed the assembled representatives, recognizing the responsibility of this moment. Earth, still considered a junior member of the Alliance, now stood to influence galactic ship design for generations. "Distinguished representatives," she began, "Earth doesn't claim superiority in our approach. We simply had different teachers." The holographic display shifted again, showing ancient Earth vessels, wooden sailing ships navigating treacherous seas, early spacecraft venturing into the unknown. For thousands of years, Earth's greatest teacher was isolation. When our ships sailed across oceans or ventured into space, they did so knowing that help might never come.